Highway Patrol have surrounded a pro-Palestinian protest on the UC Santa Cruz campus.
Yeah, this started just hours ago, early this morning. KTVU's James Torres already at the campus to show us the moments when the police confronted those protesters. Good morning, James.
David, Alley, good morning to you. Well, it certainly takes you a minute to actually get out here. That's because Santa Cruz police have several different avenues to get to this location blocked off, pretty much a half-mile radius in all different directions. So we had to park our car, walk our way out here in order to actually get to the scene of what we're seeing here. They're asking all our media who's out here to kind of stay off to the sidelines here for a bit, just so they can kind of keep an eye on everyone's position. We have to make sure that we have our press passes very visible as well. We'll go to show you exactly what we're looking at here. There are 2 points that are really catching everyone's attention. This is probably the larger of the two. At one point here, a number of these protesters had this entire roadway blocked, headed in both directions. This is kind of how you would enter the campus of UC Santa Cruz. The way they have it now, it seems like the police officers, since very early this morning, reduced the size of that demonstration to what you see here. So you see a group of students, a group of these protesters, I should say, because sometimes it is a mix of students and faculty and a number of other folks here. You see the group of protesters who are all linked in arms, appearing to be in a circle here, and then surrounded by Santa Cruz police officers. We'd also seen some personnel from the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office, CHP, as well, all with riot gear on. And for the most part, it's been kind of a standoff. We've seen a couple tense moments here where they've been grabbing each other, a little bit of shoving, a little bit of imbalance there, and then you would see a couple of these officers walk out with some of these protesters, some with hands behind their back. I actually see an arrest happening right now on the probably right side of your screen. You can see an officer who is escorting one of those protesters off away from the scene here. There's a bus that's not too far from where we're standing. It appears that's where they're taking everyone that they end up detaining. I want to go ahead and show you some of the other points that keep getting our attention. This is the entrance, essentially, to UC Santa Cruz. You see another line of officers still in riot gear here, keeping an eye on some of the people who have been watching the core protests. A lot of gravel on the front here, and that was part of the demonstration earlier this week, where the students, again, I should say protesters rather than students, came out, threw down a lot of gravel, threw down a lot of red paint here as part of their demonstration. And then there's a second, much smaller standoff, just a little bit in the distance there, where you still see a line of officers still in the riot gear, and then a number of these protesters wearing their masks, yelling these chants. Many of them have been speaking into a megaphone, trying to get their message across to police officers, and of course their message across to the public as well. Let's go ahead and point your attention back over to that main demonstration, that demonstration that we've been talking about for several days now, and that same demonstration that has led UC Santa Cruz they say, to force themselves to go into remote learning over the last few days. That's been going on for the last 3 days now, because they say that these demonstrations have prevented students, faculty, and staff to actually getting to where they need to go in order for university operations to continue entirely in person. But this is the scene right now. It's certainly much different than what we've seen at other campuses all throughout the country, especially we'll take you back to what we saw over at the University of Southern California, where we saw actual fights break out, where we saw pellet guns being shot, and we heard a lot more activity. This, compared to that, certainly a much slower process here. You see, it's basically just a standoff at this point between those officers in the riot gear as well as those pro-Palestinian protesters who really, at its most intense part, have just been kind of screaming their chants at these officers, certainly expressing their disdain for their presence being here. We've heard a lot of vulgar language. We've heard a lot of language that is pretty consistent with what we've heard with other demonstrations all across the country. And a lot of these protesters say that they will stay here. They're vowing to stay in place until they have their demands heard, which of course is asking for a ceasefire in the war in Gaza and asking for an acknowledgement of that ceasefire.